Once upon a time. The beloved daughter of Orua village. Orua village was a place of abundance. The rivers flowed with clear, sparkling water, the fields stretched far and wide, and the trees bore fruit all year round. It was a village filled with laughter, music, and tradition, where people lived in harmony and respected their elders. At the heart of this prosperous village lived a young woman named Adoma. She was known by everyone, not just because of her father's vast wealth, but because of her heart of gold. A daughter of wealth and kindness. Adoma was the only child of Okeke, the wealthiest merchant in Orua village. He owned the largest store in the market, where travelers from distant lands came to trade for rare spices, fine fabrics, and precious stones. Her mother, Mama Yor, was a renowned healer, respected not just in Orua but in many surrounding villages. People traveled for miles to seek her wisdom and healing hands. With parents as respected as hers, Adoma could have lived a life of privilege, untouched by hardship. But she was different. Unlike other children of the wealthy, Adoma was humble and kind. She helped the farmers in the fields, laughing and chatting as she carried baskets of yams on her head. She visited the market women, buying food for the elderly who could no longer walk. She played with the children, teaching them stories and songs instead of keeping herself separate like other daughters of rich men. Her beauty was admired by many. She had deep brown skin that glowed under the sun, eyes that sparkled like stars, and a smile that could melt even the coldest heart. Many young men in the village wished to marry her, but Adoma had no interest in marriage. Her heart belonged to her family and the people of Orua. The Great House of Secrets. Adoma's family lived in the largest compound in the village, a magnificent home surrounded by gardens filled with colorful flowers and tall fruit trees. It was a house of laughter and warmth, where servants bustled about, where visitors were always welcomed with open arms. But beneath the beauty of the house, there was a mystery. At the end of the western corridor, hidden behind layers of heavy drapes, was a single door, locked, untouched, and spoken of in whispers. The Forbidden Chamber. Even the oldest servant of the household had never seen it open. No one knew what lay beyond the door. No one knew who had last entered. No one dared to ask. The villagers whispered about it, but no one questioned Okeke and Mama Yor about the room. It was said that whatever was inside was too powerful, too dangerous, or too sacred for human eyes. Adoma never asked her parents about it. She was raised with one simple rule: never enter the Forbidden Chamber. And because she loved and trusted them, she never did. But the presence of that door lingered like a shadow in the back of her mind. The tragedy on the river. Then, one fateful day, the laughter in Adoma's home disappeared. It was a bright morning when Okeke and Mama Yor set out on a journey. They planned to cross the great river to visit an old friend in a distant village. Their canoe was painted with beautiful patterns, its wooden frame steady and strong. Adoma was supposed to go with them, but she had been feeling weak and feverish, so her mother told her to rest. She watched them wave goodbye as they paddled into the open water, her father's deep laugh echoing in the air, her mother's gentle voice calling out, "We return before the sun sets, my child." But the river had other plans. That afternoon, a storm came suddenly, fierce and unforgiving. The winds roared, tearing through the trees, bending them like quick grass. The river, which had been calm and steady, became a raging beast, swallowing anything in its path. When night fell, Okeke and Mama Yor did not return. The next morning, a fisherman found the remains of their canoe, shattered and empty, washed up on the riverbank. The village mourned. Adoma's parents, the two people she loved most in the world, were gone. She did not cry loudly, nor did she scream. Instead, she sat silently outside their home, staring at the road where they were supposed to return. Tears ran down her face, but her lips never moved. For the first time in her life, her house was silent. The great compound felt empty. The servants moved like ghosts, unable to bring themselves to sing or joke as they once did. And for Adoma, the world felt like it had lost its color. Alone in a house of secrets. Despite her grief, Adoma did not abandon her responsibilities. She took charge of her father's market business, ensuring that the merchants did not cheat the workers. She kept her mother's healing garden, making sure that people could still receive medicine. She led with kindness and wisdom, just as her parents had. The villagers respected her, but they also feared for her. A girl alone in a great house, carrying the burden of a family's legacy, was vulnerable. And as time passed, the whispers about the forbidden chamber began again. Some said that her parents' death was no accident. Some said that the river had claimed them because they had disturbed something unnatural. Some believed that the truth lay behind the forbidden door. And as much as Adoma tried to ignore it, the whispers found their way into her heart. She had never questioned her parents before. But now, she was alone. And the locked door at the end of the corridor seemed to watch her every night. She had followed their rules all her life. But what if the answers to her future lay in the secrets of the past? She had never thought about opening the forbidden chamber. Until now, the mysterious forbidden room. The days in Orua village passed like a quiet, endless dream. Without Okeke's laughter and Mama Yo's gentle presence, Adoma's house felt empty. The once lively compound, filled with bustling servants, traders, and visitors, was now a place of whispers and uneasy glances. But Adoma had no time for sorrow. She was now the sole keeper of her parents' legacy. She took charge of her father's marketplace, ensuring that trade continued as it should. She tended her mother's healing herbs, making sure no villager went without medicine. But the weight of responsibility pressed down on her like an unseen burden. And she could not do it alone. Cora and Lomi, the loyal siblings. One morning, as the sun stretched its golden arms over Orua village, Adoma made a decision. She needed help. That was how Cora and Lomi came into her home. The two siblings were well known in Orua for their hard work and loyalty. Cora, the elder brother, was a tall, strong young man with deep brown skin and steady, watchful eyes. He had a quiet nature, preferring to listen rather than speak, but his hands were always busy fixing, mending, and working. Lomi, his younger sister, was the opposite, lively, talkative, and full of curiosity. She had a sharp wit and a clever mind, and though she was smaller than Cora, she could carry twice her weight if needed. They were orphans, raised by an old aunt who could barely afford to feed them. When Adoma offered them work in her home, it was a blessing beyond measure. "You will both live here," Adoma told them, her voice kind but firm. "This is your home now. But remember, there is one rule. You must never enter the forbidden chamber." The siblings exchanged a glance. "We understand, Miss Adoma," Cora said, bowing slightly. Lomi nodded as well, but in her eyes, a spark of curiosity had already begun to burn. Whispers of fear. As days turned to weeks, Cora and Lomi settled into their new life. They worked harder than anyone in the household, Cora repairing broken doors, sharpening tools, and tending the fires, while Lomi scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and ran errands. But as they moved through the great house, they began to hear whispers. The older servants, those who had worked for Okeke and Mama Yo, spoke in hushed voices when passing by the forbidden chamber. Some refused to walk near it at night. Others lowered their voices whenever it was mentioned. One evening, as Lomi carried a tray of food through the corridor, she overheard two older women talking in the kitchen. "That door, the spirits behind it have been silent since Okeke and Mama Yo left," one whispered. "Silent, but not gone," the other murmured. Lomi froze in place. Spirits. Could it be true? She hurried back to Cora, her heart pounding. "Brother, have you noticed?" she asked. "No one talks about the forbidden chamber openly. But they fear it." Cora sighed, setting down a basket of firewood. "It is not our place to question, Lummy." "But don't you want to know?" she pressed. "Why is it locked? What secret is inside?" Cora shook his head. "Adoma has given us a rule. That is enough." But for Lummy, it was not enough. The door whispered to her in her dreams. It stood in the shadows of her thoughts, its presence growing stronger every day. And eventually, she could not resist any longer. The night of the forbidden door. The moon hung low over Aura village, casting silver light over the great house. The household was asleep. Only the crickets sang in the darkness. Lummy shook Cora awake. "Brother, come with me," she whispered. Cora groaned. "Lummy, go to sleep." "No. We have to open the chamber. Tonight." Cora sat up, his brows furrowed. "Are you mad?" "Maybe," Lummy admitted. "But don't you want to know the truth?" Cora hesitated. Deep down, he did. Despite his cautious nature, the whispers of the servants had stirred something in him too. And so, with slow, silent footsteps, the two siblings made their way to the forbidden chamber. The secret unleashed. The door loomed before them, its wood old yet untouched by time. The air around it felt different, thicker, heavier. Lummy reached for the handle. It was cold as ice. Cora stood beside her, his heart beat like a drum in his ears. "Are you ready?" she whispered. He nodded. Slowly, she turned the handle. Click. The lock snapped open without resistance. The door swung inward, revealing darkness. A silence thicker than night swallowed them whole. Lummy stepped inside first. The moment her foot touched the floor, the room shifted. She gasped. "Cora," she whispered. She could no longer see. Darkness had swallowed her vision. She reached out, panic setting in. "Cora, where are you?" She heard his footsteps, then his sudden gasp. "Lummy, I can't hear you." She screamed his name, but to Cora, there was only silence. Trapped in a curse. The two siblings stood frozen in the darkness, trapped in an invisible force. Lummy, unable to see. Cora, unable to hear. They tried to move, but the shadows clung to them like vines. The air grew colder. The room whispered. Something ancient and unseen was watching them. Then, the door slammed shut. And the house fell silent once more. The disappearance and suspicion. The sun rose over Aura village, casting warm golden light over the rooftops and trees. Birds chirped in the early morning air, and the village slowly awakened. But inside Adoma's great house, something was terribly wrong. Cora and Lummy were missing. They vanishing. The first to notice was an elderly cook named Mama Kemi. She shuffled into the kitchen at dawn, expecting to find Lummy kneeling by the fire, preparing the morning meal, but the kitchen was empty and cold. "Strange," she muttered, frowning. Assuming Lummy had overslept, she went looking for her in the servants' quarters. But when she pushed open the door, she found Cora's bed untouched, the blanket neatly folded as if he had never laid in it. Lummy's bed was the same, undisturbed, cold, abandoned. Mama Kemi's heart lurched in her chest. Where are these children? She hurried through the house, calling their names. Her voice echoed against the silent walls. No answer. She searched the gardens. No sign of them. She checked the storerooms. Empty. She asked the other servants. No one had seen Cora or Lummy since the night before. Fear twisted in Mama Kemi's gut. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. The search begins. By midday, panic had set in. The entire household was in an uproar. Adoma stood in the center of the courtyard, her face pale and stricken. "Are you certain no one saw them leave?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "Certain, Miss Adoma," Mama Kemi whispered, wringing her hands. Adoma's stomach clenched. This couldn't be happening. Cora and Lomi were loyal, hardworking, and grateful. They would never just disappear. So where were they? The entire village soon got involved. Men and women searched the fields, calling their names. Children ran through the village pathways, peering into huts, hoping to find them. Fishermen scanned the riverbanks, fearing the worst. But there was nothing. No footprints. No signs of a struggle. No whispers of where they might have gone. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed them whole. And that was when the rumors began. Whispers in the wind. The forbidden chamber took them. That house, it has always been cursed. Maybe the spirits inside the room got hungry. Or maybe, just maybe, Adoma knows more than she is saying. The whisper started soft, like the rustling of dry leaves. But soon, they grew louder. Orua village was built on tradition. It was a place where people believed in spirits, in curses, in things unseen. The forbidden chamber had always been a mystery, but no one had dared to speak of it while Okeke and Momayo were alive. Now, with Cora and Lomi gone without a trace, the villagers allowed their fears to consume them. They gathered in the market square, speaking in hushed, urgent voices. "Adoma is the only one left in that house," someone said. "She must know something. Her parents were wise, but maybe they kept dark secrets. What if she sacrificed them?" The word spread like wildfire. And soon, suspicion turned to blame. Adoma's nightmare. Adoma felt the change immediately. When she walked through the market, the warm smiles that once greeted her were gone. When she approached the well, women drew back, whispering behind their hands. Even the children who once adored her now watched her with wide, fearful eyes. She couldn't understand it. "Why do they look at me like this?" she asked Mama Kemi one afternoon. The old woman hesitated. "It is the whispers, my dear." Adoma frowned. "What whispers?" Mama Kemi's lips pressed into a thin line. "Some people say you know what happened to Cora and Lomi." Adoma's blood ran cold. "That is a lie," she gasped. "I know, child," Mama Kemi sighed. "But people fear what they do not understand." Adoma's heart pounded in her chest. She had already lost her parents. Now, she was losing her village too. The turning point. The final blow came when the village chief summoned her. She stood before the council of elders, her hands clenched at her sides. "Adoma," the chief said gravely. "We have searched every corner of this village, yet Cora and Lomi are nowhere to be found." Adoma nodded, her throat dry. "I know, chief. I am as devastated as you." The chief's eyes darkened. "Then tell me, child, what do you know of the forbidden chamber?" Adoma's breath caught. She saw the way the elders stared at her, their expressions unreadable. She saw the villagers in the background, their faces twisted with fear and suspicion. She saw her own future unraveling before her. She had been raised never to question the forbidden chamber. But now, that silence might be the very thing that destroys her. The accusation and betrayal. The council hut was filled with the elders of Orua village. Their faces were grave and unreadable, their eyes fixed on Adoma as she stood in the center of the room. The air was thick with whispers and suspicion. Outside, a crowd had gathered, murmuring amongst themselves. Some spoke in hushed tones, others loudly voiced their accusations. The fear of the unknown had turned into something dangerous, blame. And Adoma was at the center of it all. Summoned before the elders. The village chief, a tall, imposing man named Chief Omoren, sat on a carved wooden stool, tapping his staff against the ground. Adoma, daughter of Okeke and Mama Yor, he said, his deep voice carrying through the hut. You have been brought before this council to answer an important question. Adoma lifted her chin, despite the fear twisting inside her. I will answer anything, Chief, she said. The elders exchanged glances. What do you know of the forbidden chamber? A wave of silence washed over the room. Adoma felt her heart pound in her chest. This was it. She had always been taught never to speak of the chamber. Her parents had given her one rule: never open the door, and never speak of what lies within. Even now, with her life hanging in the balance, she could not betray them. She took a deep breath. I know only what my parents told me, she said carefully. That the chamber must remain locked, untouched. One of the elders, a wrinkled old man with sharp eyes, leaned forward. And yet 2 people have disappeared under your roof. I do not know what happened to them, Adoma answered firmly. The elders whispered among themselves. The villagers outside grew restless. She is hiding something, someone muttered. She knows the truth but will not say it, another voice accused. The chief raised his hand, and the hut fell silent again. Adoma, he said slowly. You are your parents' only child. If they kept a secret from the village, then surely they must have told you something. Adoma closed her eyes. They did not, she whispered. It was the truth. But the truth was not enough. Because in the silence that followed, her refusal to explain condemned her more than a confession ever could. The rumors turned to accusations. The moment Adoma left the council hut, she knew something had changed. The way people looked at her was different now. No longer with sympathy, but suspicion. No longer with kindness, but fear. She heard the whispers growing. She is protecting whatever is inside that room. Maybe she sacrificed them for more wealth. Her father was rich, but now she is alone. Maybe she needed to renew their power. She is a witch. The words stung like thorns piercing her skin. She had spent her whole life helping these people. And now, they were turning against her. Even her friends, the ones who had once laughed beside her, would not meet her eyes. Betrayed by those she loved. That evening, Adoma sought out her childhood friend, Naya. Naya had always been like a sister to her. They had grown up together, shared secrets, and dreamed of their futures. But when Adoma found her near the river, Naya stepped back. Naya, Adoma said, confused. Why are you afraid of me? Naya swallowed hard. I don't know what to think, Adoma. You know me. Adoma pleaded. You know I would never harm anyone. Naya looked away. Then tell us what happened to Kora and Lomi, she whispered. Adoma felt her heart crack. I don't know. Naya took another step back. Then I'm sorry, Adoma. But I cannot stand by your side. Adoma felt the tears stain her eyes. She turned and walked away, her feet heavy, her heart shattered. She was alone. Truly alone. The trial. The next morning, the chief called for a village gathering. The entire village stood in the market square, their faces a mix of anger and unease. Adoma stood before them, her hands shaking. The chief lifted his staff. Adoma, you have been accused of hiding the truth about Kora and Lomi's disappearance, he announced. A murmur ran through the crowd. Adoma opened her mouth to defend herself, but before she could speak, someone shouted. What if she has been using dark magic all along? Adoma's blood ran cold. The murmurs turned to louder accusations. She was always different from the rest of us. Her family was wealthy. Maybe they had powers. What if she is a witch? Adoma looked at the chief, pleading. Please, she whispered. You know me. My family. The chief's face was unreadable. Then tell us what is inside the forbidden chamber. Adoma closed her eyes. She could not break her parents' trust, even if it meant saving herself. The silence stretched. And then, the chief let out a deep sigh. Adoma, by the power of this council, you are found guilty of deception and dark practices. The crowd gasped. Adoma's legs gave out beneath her. No, she whispered. But the decision had been made. And the punishment. Death, the tragic execution. The morning sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, but there was no warmth in Orua village. The air was heavy with an unsettling silence, the kind that only comes before a great tragedy. In the village square, a wooden post stood tall, surrounded by dried logs and straw. Adoma was brought forward, her hands bound, her feet dragging across the dusty ground. She was no longer the beloved daughter of Orua village. She was now a prisoner, a sacrifice, a name soon to be forgotten. The villagers had gathered in numbers, some filled with anger, others with uncertainty, but all too afraid to speak against the elders. The fear of the unknown had turned them into a mob. And today, Adoma would burn. The plea for mercy. The moment they tied her to the post, Adoma's voice rang through the silence. Please, she cried. I have done nothing wrong. Her once bright and confident voice was now raw with desperation. She scanned the crowd, searching for a familiar, sympathetic face. But no one would meet her eyes. Her people, the ones she had helped, the ones she had loved, turned away. Tears blurred her vision. I am not a witch, she begged. I have harmed no one. You all know me. But the villagers stood still. Because they also knew that fear was stronger than truth. And today, fear had won. The elders stepped forward, their expressions cold and unreadable. The chief raised his staff. Adoma, you have been judged by the council and found guilty of witchcraft, deception, and the disappearance of Korra and Lomi. You will be punished by fire. His words sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Adoma shook her head furiously. Chief Omoran, please. You knew my parents. Would they have raised a murderer? The chief's jaw tightened. Then tell us what lies inside the forbidden chamber. Adoma felt the weight of her silence crushing her. She could not betray her parents. Even now. She lowered her head, her tears falling into the dust beneath her feet. She had no answer that would save her. The chief exhaled heavily. Let the sentence be carried out. The fire begins. A man stepped forward, holding a burning torch. The flames flickered and danced, eager to consume. Adoma felt her heartbeat quicken. Wait, she shouted. For the first time, there was hesitation in the crowd. People shifted on their feet, their once confident judgment now feeling like a noose around their own necks. They had come for justice. But now, standing before the flames, was this truly justice? The torchbearer paused. Adoma lifted her head. Her tears had dried. Her fear had melted into something else. Something colder, sharper. You are all making a mistake. Her voice was no longer pleading. It was strong, steady. One day, she said, her dark eyes burning into the faces around her, the same fear that made you condemn me will come for you. A nervous murmur rippled through the crowd. Adoma's voice rose like the wind before a storm. One day, you will be accused just as I have been. And when you stand where I stand, when you beg for mercy, asterisk. She glared at them, her voice now shaking with grief and fury. There will be none. The crowd shivered. The torch fell into the dry wood. And the flames came alive. The curse and the guilt. The fire roared like a beast unleashed. Smoke curled into the sky, carrying Adoma's final words with it. Some villagers turned away, unable to watch. Others clutched their chests, their hearts heavy with a guilt they could not name. Even the chief's grip on his staff wavered. This did not feel like justice. It felt like something much, much worse. The flames grew higher, licking the sky, devouring everything. And then, a cold wind swept through the village. The fire flickered, weakened, then roared even higher, as if taking Adoma's rage with it. And as the flames consumed her, her last words echoed in their minds, over and over. "You will suffer as I have suffered." Her voice did not fade. It remained. It lingered in the smoke, in the crackling of the fire, in the hearts of the villagers who, too late, realized their mistake, the curse and the lesson learned. Years had passed since Adoma's tragic execution. Orua village had moved on, or at least, they tried to. But the land never forgot. The place where Adoma had been burned remained untouched. No one built on it, no grass grew there, no child dared to play near it. Some called it bad luck. Others whispered that it was Adoma's spirit refusing to leave. The villagers never spoke of what they had done. But the weight of guilt clung to them, hidden beneath false smiles and empty words. And then, one day, the curse came to collect its debt. The false accusation. It began with a sacred relic. A village from across the river, Enduka village, had been robbed. A golden idol, a statue believed to bring fortune and protection, had been stolen from their shrine. The people of Enduka searched for answers, and their eyes fell upon Orua. "We have seen your people in our village," they accused. "Your traders pass through our land daily. Who else could it be?" Orua's chief, Omoran, now old and weak, tried to protest. "We did not take your idol. We have no need for it." But just as his village had once turned against Adoma without proof, Enduka did the same to them. Their pleas meant nothing. Their words were ignored. They were judged guilty before they could defend themselves. And the punishment? Orua was banished. For 10 years, no one from the outside world could trade with them. No one could marry into their families. No one could help them if they suffered drought, sickness, or famine. It was a death sentence without fire. The village that had once been rich and prosperous slowly began to crumble. Their wealth meant nothing if no one would trade with them. Their voices meant nothing if no one would listen. And in their suffering, they finally understood the realization of their sin. The villagers sat in silence, gathered in the same marketplace where Adoma had begged for mercy. "This is what she felt," whispered Mama Kemi, now frail with age. "We were innocent, just as she was," muttered another elder. "And yet, no one will listen." The pain of injustice burned them in a way fire never could. They had sent an innocent girl to her death. And now, they knew her pain. The curse was not in her words, nor in the fire that had taken her. The curse was in the guilt that lived in their hearts. They had become the very thing they once feared. And Adoma's final warning echoed through the empty streets. "One day, you will be accused just as I have been. And when you beg for mercy, there will be none." The memorial of regret. Chief Omoran, now weak with age, could not erase what had been done. But he could ensure that Adoma was never forgotten. One evening, he called for a gathering. Before the eyes of the entire village, he stood in the empty square where Adoma had been burned. His voice trembled, not with power, but with sorrow. "We were wrong," he said, his eyes wet with regret. "We let fear blind us. We let suspicion destroy an innocent life. And now, the same injustice has found its way back to us." The villagers listened in silence, their faces heavy with shame. They watched as the chief and the elders placed a stone in the center of the village. Upon it, they carved the words, Here lies the memory of Adoma, the daughter of Orua, who was wrongfully condemned. Let her story remind us that injustice will always return to those who refuse to seek the truth. That night, for the first time in years, rain fell over Orua village. Some believed it was Adoma's spirit weeping. Others believed it was her forgiveness. But one thing was certain. Her name would never be forgotten. Final lesson of the story. This tale teaches us the dangers of fear, false judgments, and injustice. For those in power, it reminds us that justice must be built on truth, not fear. For those who follow, it warns us not to let suspicion turn us into monsters. For those who suffer, it teaches that though the world may turn against you, truth will always have its day. And for those who remember Adoma's story, it is a lesson that justice, once abandoned, will always return to collect its debt. The end.